I went to the office on Sunday and found my father crying, but my brother was in the boardroom celebrating with our biggest competitor. The Boston sun had barely risen when I left home that Sunday. The empty streets of the financial district reflected the golden light of dawn. Winters and Sons Construction occupied the top 3 floors of the building on Commonwealth Avenue, a company my grandfather founded with his own hands in 1962. I grew up listening to stories of how he carried bricks on his back to build the first projects, sleeping only 4 hours a night, so that my brother and I could attend the best schools in Massachusetts. That company was more than a business. It was our family's blood legacy. Normally, I wouldn't go to the office on a Sunday, but I needed to review the proposal documents for the new Lexington Commercial Center before Monday's meeting. A $75 million contract that could mean the company's expansion into new markets in the American Northeast. I inserted my access card at the main entrance, the silence of the building broken only by the soft hum of the central air conditioning. As the elevator ascended to the 20th floor, I checked my emails on my cell phone. 2 unread messages from my father sent at 4:37 a.m. "We need to talk urgently," and "I'm in the office, come as soon as you can." When the elevator doors opened, I noticed a light on at the end of the corridor, coming from my father's room. I walked slowly, with a growing feeling that something was wrong. Charles Winters, CEO of Winters & Sons for the last 30 years, had always been an unwavering man who faced 3 economic recessions without showing a single moment of weakness. As I approached the ajar door of his office, I heard a sound I had never heard in my 42 years of life, the contained crying of my father. He was sitting in his black leather chair, with his back to the entrance, contemplating the city he helped build. His broad shoulders, now slumped, trembled slightly. Scattered over his desk were various documents and a half-empty bottle of Macallan 25-year-old. I knocked softly on the door. He turned quickly, trying to disguise the tears that marked his aged face. His eyes, always so penetrating and secure, were red and swollen. "David, what are you doing here so early?" His voice betrayed the effort to appear composed. "I received your messages, Dad. What happened?" He took a deep breath, as if searching for the strength to utter words that seemed to hurt his throat. He picked up a red folder from the desk and handed it to me without saying anything. Inside, I found confidential documents from our company, detailed spreadsheets with operational costs, profit margins, expansion strategies for the next 5 years, and, most alarmingly, copies of proposals for the 3 largest projects we were competing for, including the one in Lexington. On the last page, a handwritten note that I immediately recognized as my brother Michael's handwriting. "Everything as agreed. I will be at the Sunday meeting at 7 a.m. to finalize. The 2-5M deposit has already been made. No regrets." I felt my stomach sink like an imploded building. Over the last year, Michael had been showing restlessness with the company's conservative directions. At 39, my younger brother had always been the adventurer, the one who wanted quick changes, accelerated expansion, bigger risks. I, as the financial director, always prioritized the stability that my grandfather and father built. We had 342 employees who depended on sensible decisions, not risky bets. But I never imagined that his frustration could lead him to something so extreme. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" There must be some explanation. Michael would never... My father interrupted me with a tired gesture. "I received a call from Howard Peterson last night. The building security saw Michael handing documents to Jeffrey Collins in the parking lot on Thursday. Howard decided to install additional cameras. Look at this." He turned his laptop, showing the security camera footage from the parking lot. There was my brother, handing a folder identical to the one I was holding to the CEO of Collins Enterprises, our biggest competitor for 3 generations. The date in the corner of the screen, Friday, 10th, 15 p.m. Jeffrey Collins was known in the market as Concrete Shark. His company had been investigated twice for anti-competitive practices, bribery of inspectors, and use of substandard materials. Even so, he managed to get government contracts through obscure political connections. Losing the Lexington project to them would be financially devastating, but seeing that my own brother was collaborating with Collins, that was a betrayal that went beyond the limits of business. It was a stab in the heart of our family. I needed to sit down to absorb the impact of that revelation. My father continued, his voice choked by what seemed to be a mixture of sadness and anger. The lawyers will be informed early tomorrow. We will request a court injunction immediately, and Michael will be removed from the board. I never imagined I would need to do this. As he spoke, I realized that something still didn't fit. Why would Michael be at the office at 7 a.m. on a Sunday? Dad, what meeting is Michael mentioning in the note? Which Sunday meeting at 7 a.m.? My father looked at the wall clock. 6:55. I don't know. There was nothing on the agenda. At that moment, we heard the distant sound of voices coming from the boardroom on the other side of the floor. We exchanged a quick glance, and without saying a word, we got up and walked silently down the corridor. As we approached, the voices became clearer. I immediately recognized Jeffrey Collins' loud laugh. Through the small crack in the door, I could see my brother standing, presenting slides on a large screen. At the table, besides Collins, were seated 2 members of the Lexington Municipal Council and the head of bids for Middlesex County, all with champagne glasses in their hands. And so, gentlemen, with the Winters & Sons pricing strategy in hand, we can present a proposal exactly 5% below the minimum viable value for them. When they lose Lexington, they will be vulnerable for acquisition. Michael spoke with an excitement I had never seen in the family business. His face was illuminated by an ambition that distorted his familiar features, turning him into a stranger before my eyes. And as agreed, as soon as Collins Enterprises takes control, you will be appointed CEO of the new joint operation with 22% of the shares. My whole body trembled with a wave of anger and disappointment so intense that I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. My brother was not only betraying the company, he was selling our family inheritance for a position and a stake in a competing company. My grandfather's sacrifices, my father's lifetime of work, the security of hundreds of families who depended on Winters & Sons, all of this was being negotiated like chips in a casino. My father, always so controlled and diplomatic, pushed the door hard, making it bang against the wall. The sudden sound froze everyone present. The champagne in Collins's glass wobbled, spilling a few drops on the mahogany table that my grandfather had imported from Europe when the company turned 25. Michael? My father's voice, normally firm and commanding, sounded fragile and broken. My brother's face instantly paled, his eyes widening in shock and then narrowing into an expression of calculated defiance. Dad, David, you're early. His voice tried to maintain composure, but trembled at the edges. The room plunged into a thick silence, interrupted only by the soft bubbling of champagne in the glasses. Collins was the first to recover, adjusting his Hermes tie, as if this were just a minor inconvenience. Charles, what a pleasant surprise. Your son has an impressive vision for the future. We should discuss this civilly. As businessmen, I'm sure we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone. His predatory smile did not reach his cold eyes. My father took a step forward, ignoring Collins completely, his eyes fixed on Michael. Why? That was all he managed to say, one word loaded with the weight of decades of trust destroyed in an instant. Michael let out a bitter laugh. Why? Do you really need to ask? I spent the last 5 years proposing changes, modernization, expansion. And what did I get? You two blocking me at every turn, treating me like an irresponsible boy. This company is a dinosaur about to become extinct, stuck in outdated methods while the world moves forward. If you can't see the future, I found someone who can. I looked at the municipal council members and the head of bids, who now seemed extremely uncomfortable. Gentlemen, are you aware that you are participating in a meeting that involves the theft of intellectual property, illegally obtained confidential information, and possible manipulation of a public bid? As a lawyer trained at Harvard, I can assure you that this constitutes several federal crimes. My cell phone was already in my hand, the camera recording discreetly. The three men looked at each other nervously. The head of bids was the first to stand up. "Mr. Collins, Michael, you didn't inform me about these details. I cannot and will not participate in something like this." He grabbed his folder and hurried out, followed by the municipal councilors, who muttered inaudible apologies. Collins stood up slowly, adjusting his $800 Italian suit. "Well, it looks like we'll have to postpone our celebration. Michael, we'll continue this conversation in my office." He headed for the door, but my father blocked his way. "Jeffrey, you can leave. But know that on Monday morning, our lawyers will be filing lawsuits against you and your company for unfair competition, theft of intellectual property, and contractual interference. As for the recordings of this meeting, I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce Ethics Commission and the Department of Justice will be very interested in them." My father's voice had recovered its authority. He was no longer the broken man I found crying, but the respected leader who built an empire with integrity. Collins cast a look of disdain at Michael. "Is this what you guaranteed me? That no one would find out until it was too late? What amateurism! Do you really think you still have a place at Collins Enterprises after this fiasco? You just burned every bridge, boy." Without waiting for a response, he pushed my father aside and left. The three of us were left alone in the boardroom, the silence heavy as fresh concrete. Michael stared at us with a mixture of anger and shame. "You never understood my value. It was always David this, David that, the responsible son, the perfect heir. And me? Just the impulsive younger brother who needed to be contained. Well, now you'll understand what you lost." My father approached Michael, his face etched with deep pain. "Son, you didn't just betray the company or me. You betrayed your grandfather, who died believing he had raised men of principle. You betrayed every employee who depends on us. And why? For money and power that you could have honestly earned over time." "I can't take your lectures anymore," Michael shouted, his face contorted. "This company is a dinosaur about to become extinct. Collins or someone like him will eventually swallow it. I was just positioning myself for the inevitable. Business is business, Dad. There is no room for sentimentalism or antiquated loyalties." While they argued, I walked over to Michael's laptop and inserted my flash drive. I quickly copied all the files I found about the agreement with Collins. The betrayal had not started yesterday. It was a meticulous plan developed over at least 8 months. Every document I found deepened the wound of betrayal. Monday, 8 o'clock in the morning. "I want you in my office with your lawyer." My father's voice was icy now. "Until then, you are suspended from all your duties in the company. Your access to the systems and the building will be revoked immediately. If you try to access any document or contact any client or employee, the legal consequences will be severe. Now, get out." Michael hesitated, as if he wanted to say something more, but my father's look silenced him. He grabbed his jacket from the chair and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned with a final challenging look. "You two are going to regret this. When the dust settles, you'll see that I was right. This company needed a shake-up, and I just did what was necessary." Then he left, his steps echoing down the empty corridor. In the days that followed, a legal and emotional storm descended upon us. Our legal team managed to obtain an injunction preventing the leaked information from being used in any bid. Collins Enterprises' proposal for the Lexington project was disqualified after a preliminary investigation. The municipal councilors resigned from their positions, and the head of bids was suspended pending investigation. Michael was removed from the board, and his shares in the company were frozen. He threatened a long legal process. But when we presented the evidence, his stance changed. He agreed to an out-of-court settlement that permanently excluded him from the company in exchange for a significantly lower financial liquidation than the value of his shares. For 3 months, my father struggled to maintain his composure in front of employees and partners. In public, he was the same confident Charles Winters, but I would find him alone in his office, looking at old family photos. Michael's betrayal had broken something fundamental in him, a wound that even time seemed incapable of completely healing. At the annual shareholders' meeting, 6 months after that fateful Sunday, my father announced his retirement. With a firm voice but teary eyes, he introduced me as the new CEO of Winters & Sons Construction. When he finished his speech about integrity, family, and the true meaning of success, the entire room stood up in an ovation that lasted almost 5 minutes. There wasn't a dry eye in the hall. That night, during a private dinner at his house on Beacon Hill, my father handed me the gold pocket watch that my grandfather always carried on construction sites, a symbol that time passes, but principles remain. David, your grandfather used to say that buildings, like families, need solid foundations. You always understood that. Even in the most difficult moments, I never questioned your loyalty or integrity. The company is in good hands now. A year after that Sunday, Winters & Sons won the contract to build the new State University campus, the largest project in our history until then, valued at $112 million. At the groundbreaking ceremony, I invited my father to give the first symbolic hammer blow. As he positioned himself for the moment, our eyes met, a silent communication loaded with pain, overcoming, and hope. That afternoon, as we watched the excavators preparing the ground for what would be our most emblematic work, my father broke the contemplative silence. You know, David, for a long time I wondered where we went wrong with Michael, what we could have done differently. I concluded that some people simply choose their path, regardless of the upbringing they received. The choice was always his. I nodded, feeling the weight of my grandfather's watch in my jacket pocket. The company had survived stronger and more resilient. We had weathered the storm with our integrity intact. And perhaps that was the true inheritance that my grandfather and father built, not just buildings of concrete and steel, but a foundation of unwavering principles, strong enough to resist even the deepest betrayal.